Hello, this is Alan Shipnuck back for another Fire Drill podcast. As always, we need to give a shout out to our sponsors, PowerPoint, the best golf scoring app ever invented by man or God. It really makes the game more fun and interesting. If you're tired of just old man par, I would definitely recommend you check it out. It's at the App Store. Go download it today. And then Dormy Workshop, another great supporter of everything we do here at the Fire Pit Collective. They make super cool handmade artisanal leather goodies for your golf bag and your life in general. If you go to the Fire Pit site on our website, we have some special things that are unique to the Fire Pit Collective. But Dormy does all kinds of cool stuff. I would implore you to check it out. So let's get to the podcast at hand. Joined by two aces, not four aces. Like on LIV Golf, but we have two aces in Michael Bamberger and Ryan French. So it was quite an eventful week in golf, gents. I think we should start with Tom Kim, who is just going off. I mean, a few months ago, even the most restless Golf Channel viewer never heard this guy's name. He's won twice on the PGA Tour. He dusted Patrick Cantlay in a great shootout in Vegas. And of course, he had quite a starring role at the President's Cup. I was struggling to think of the last basic unknown who has burst onto the scene like this. I mean, you can't say Tiger because he had an incredible amateur career. Maybe Sergio, but he was making cameos in the big time. I mean, I'll just put out to both of you guys. Who does this kid remind you of? Is just this incredible debut on the global golf stage.
And let's just note for any listener who doesn't know what you just said, when you say kid, he's a kid. He's 20.
Yeah.
And as everyone knows, no one since Tiger has won twice before turning 21. That is a really good question because everyone is so known now. I've trotted this out a million times, but when Ernie Els turned pro at about 19 and he was playing in his first tournament in Europe, and I happened to be caddying in his group, and my guy, Peter Thomson, said, I don't know who the fuck this kid is, but he can golf his ball. And that's sort of where this Tom Kim is. How does somebody come up? And now do you look at him, he looks like he's 34. He's got an old man swing. He's not ready for the gym. He doesn't look like he cares. And he doesn't look like he's trying to hit it hard. He's just like, he's out of nowhere. Everything about him, he's laid off like a lot of modern guys are. That's a great question, Alan. I can't think of anyone readily except for maybe, Ernie way back when before the internet. Ryan, you follow all these young golfers coming up. Did you know about him yourself?
Yeah. So there's a guy named Jude Deloy who is a follower and become friends of mine, and he's a gambler, one of these, and he was on and another guy named Skyler who has been on Tom Kim for a long time. He's won, he won over in Asia a couple times, and so I'll tell a quick Tom Kim story. I posted the video. Jake, as the producer, you got to put it in right here.
Don't worry, we're not touching your body. He'll eat it. He'll take it, and I know this is important. Oh yeah, he would have been after that. He would have ran and put it in the hole for you.
Come back.
Sure.
We're at the Waste Management Monday qualifier in 2019 or 20. Tom Kim has hit his ball onto a bridge. Okay, and at that time, I think he had won 2 or 3 times, and he was 18 years old. I think this was his first trip to the United States. So welcome to the Monday Q Life. McCormick Ranch, where the Waste Management Monday is played, is not a good golf course. You hit mats, it's not great. It's just a factory. So Thomas hit his ball onto a bridge and is waiting for a ruling. In the meantime, me and Neil are watching the Monday qualifier and watching Tom, and we see a woman with 2 dogs walking on the golf course, and she is coming directly for Tom and this bridge, and we're like, no way this is going to happen. And sure enough, she comes across the bridge. She's Canadian. She goes, and Tom Kim is over his ball. This can be the social clip. He's over his ball, guarding it as she comes across the bridge, and she goes, Yeah, that's a good job. I'll know he'll eat it. He'll grab that ball. You better protect it. And then she walks by and goes, I know this is important, but I gotta walk my dogs, and leaves. And I was just like, what just happened? And this poor 18-year-old South Korean kid who's just come to the United States for the first time was like, oh my God, the PGA Tour must be so great. I can't wait for all these dreams. And here he is on a bridge. And this woman is walking her dog over the bridge. It was wild. And I posted that video tonight just now to say, like, wow, what a 2.5 years it's been for Tom Kim, who's now like a rising star.
How old was he when he turned pro? He was already playing pro at 18 then.
Yeah, he was 17, I think.
No, I think he turned pro when he was 15 because his family, they moved to the Philippines at one point because they thought it'd be better for golf and better for the dad's professional life. And he kind of dominated golf in the Philippines. He wasn't getting recruited by American colleges. He was 15 years old and he knew he wanted to be a pro golfer. He said, screw it, I'm just going to turn pro. And, it's kind of the Ty Tryon or, so there's been a few others who've turned pro around that age. Back in the day, the Ian Woosnams of the world, it wasn't unheard of to turn pro in your mid-teens, but somehow he made it work. I mean, I think any modern golf observer would have said that's nuts, that's crazy. But he did, as Ryan said. He's had success throughout Asia. I guess maybe in the beginning we kind of oversold it a little bit. I mean, if you're a serious student of the game, you'd heard this kid's name, but for the casual fan, it's just certainly he's come out of nowhere. And to your point, Michael, I mean, in the era of the internet, it's almost impossible to sneak up on anyone. But it just feels like he went from being, there's this kid who's playing pretty well in Malaysia, to all of a sudden he's one of the biggest stars in the game. I mean, I think any tournament in the world would kill to have Tom Kim in their field right now because of his charisma and the way that people have responded to him.
So that brings up the question, guys. I mean, if you're LIV, if you're Greg Norman, right, you have to have a target on Tom Kim, right? Like, he's 20 years old. He is like everything that you need on that tour, right? Like, you have a bunch of old guys, you have some names, like you need a young, vibrant, rising star. Not that they don't have a little bit of that, Cam Smith, a little bit older, but they don't have like, the kid. They have to be just absolutely hammering that guy with offers.
Well, yeah, anecdotally, I was told already earlier this year that he had an offer that he turned down. But of course, they can just add another zero to it, and it becomes a lot more interesting. I mean, certainly the price tag has gone way up. But I wrote this, I think in one of my mailbags. I mean, the President's Cup is the greatest recruiting tool the PGA Tour has right now, because that experience that Tom Kim had, being embraced by all these world-class players, including the Americans. And I think he said that Sunday night party was like the first party he ever went to. He was like a very serious, determined, focused kid. Like, I think that will make a loyalist of him. On the other hand, if you follow, the social media of the LIV players, they're doing their own partying, and they've tried to foster this atmosphere as well. But it's a little more organic from, I think, what Tom Kim enjoyed at the President's Cup. But he does seem like, I go back, and Michael, you cited this Max Homa line a few times. You can't buy my dreams, right? And I think this kid, this very winding path he took beginning in the Philippines as an early teenager, he was laser focused on the PGA Tour, and I think it has a lot of meaning to him. It was the shining, city on a hill kind of thing, and so for guys like that, maybe the tour stuff runs deeper. But no doubt, I'm sure you're right, Ryan, that another offer is forthcoming.
I may be that's very well said, Alan. I think that the biggest thing to come out of this President's Cup will probably be Tom Kim's affection for anything related to the PGA Tour. And I was on the phone with Davis, right after that. Davis Love, the captain of the U.S. team, he said, Tom Kim was wandering around the U.S. team room where everyone's celebrating, of course, with adult beverages. And he literally, at age 20, it's kind of hard to imagine, but I think Davis was just telling it straight. He was walking around with a water bottle because he was underage, and I don't know the kid at all, but that kind of experience will last a lifetime. And we all know what it's like to be 20. The things that happen to you when you're 20 stay with you for the rest of your life. And now, of course, LIV has had a lot of success recruiting people that I would have guessed would have been unrecruitable. I would have put Patrick Reed in that category. I would have been completely wrong about that. But just looking at his comments after the tournament today, he's citing the PGA Tour by name, and he's too young and naive to be like playing one, I would think. I think he's really proud to be winning on the PGA Tour, beating Patrick Cantlay and other Jason Day and other name brand players down the stretch, and it's neat.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously what perfect timing for the PGA Tour. I mean, the fall series is obviously, even in a normal year, is pretty boring for most fans. And obviously this year, just the PGA Tour needs as much good stuff happening as it can. So, the President's Cup in general is pretty boring, but if it produces stars like this every once in a while, then it's worth it. And the fact that he's came and capitalized after that is just a huge win for the PGA Tour, assuming that he stays. And I agree with all that you guys have said, that it seems, what he said, obviously the other side of being 20 years old is you put a big enough blank check in front of you, you can just kind of forget about all the dreams and think about all the cars you can buy.
Just to follow up, Ryan, on that point real quick, and I know, Alan, you got something. I'll make this real quick. But Nicholas said this right from the start. The PGA Tour will lose players, and it will develop new stars, and the LIV Tour will develop its own stars. And here's a man in his early 80s saying that, but it sounds so obvious. But it's, until someone says it, it's not obvious, but it's true. I mean, that's the way of the world, and it's especially the way of the PGA Tour. But the PGA Tour has something that LIV Golf doesn't have, which is a system to earn your keep. You're not invited; you have to earn your way there. And so, for me, that would always be something extra special. But Alan, I didn't want to cut you off. I saw you were right about to say something.
Oh no, I feel like in a weird way, LIV Golf has elevated the fall series on the PGA Tour, because these scrappy tournaments with not really brand name players, the palpable hunger and the chance to change the whole trajectory of your career.
Welcome to my world, everybody. This is what I've been preaching for 5 years now.
Yeah. I know. Well, but it's hard. You couldn't feel that during the FedEx Cup when Rory of all people is going to win another $18 million. Who cares? That feels like LIV Golf. That's the rich getting richer. But now you come to Vegas and all these other events that are lacking depth and stars for the most part, and there's a chance for a young guy to go to a whole different level. We've seen it throughout this fall series with players. Like, really, there's a desire there that you can feel. It's been neat.
Right, because when you talk about, and we're going to get to it, I know, but just to jump the gun here for a quick second, when you talk about Chicarra, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah.
When Chicarra wins that event, of course, he's a super talented player, and he beat, a lot of good players to win this thing. But if it weren't Chicarra, but Norman decided, or the committee, whomever decided, we want this kid and not this kid, it's just a little bit more, not a little bit, it's a lot more random. And not really what tournament golf has always been, that doesn't mean it always will be, which is survival of the fittest to get there. It's an invitation, as Norman says, we're a closed shop by invitation only. That's just very different. So, I mean, here you got Chicarra's probably right about the same age. I don't know his exact age, but they got to be, they're total contemporaries. Older, but yeah. Okay, but they're total contemporaries. Which of these two guys is better? We don't really know, but you kind of guess Tom Kim, because he's proven himself against a deeper, bigger field.
Yeah, of course, we're talking about Eugenio Lopez-Chicarra, who won the LIV event in Bangkok, recently of Oklahoma State, and he was an important signing for LIV, because, as you were saying before, Ryan, I mean, a lot of the guys that went over there have significant amount of wear and tear. There's not much tread left on some of those tires, but this is a young, ascendant player, obviously not of U.S. origin, which makes him probably more attractive from a LIV standpoint. And for him to throw in with LIV instead of what could have been a very long and healthy career on the PGA Tour. And those are the kind of signings that were important for LIV. And for this kid to break through and win was a big deal. And of course, his team also had a terrific showing. They won that. So, he took home $4.75 million today, which more than Tom Kim's 2 victories combined easily on the PGA Tour. So it is interesting because I was talking to a college coach recently, and it was someone who coached Taylor Gooch, and of course Taylor Gooch went to Oklahoma State, and I said, how much are the college kids talking about LIV? And he said, a lot. It's, they recognize it. As you're saying, Michael, it's invitation only, but how they play in college and these amateur events in the summer, that's how they get invited, and that becomes an avenue to win $5 million in one day in Bangkok, Thailand. So, it's interesting. It is invitation only, but you have to earn that invitation with good play and having some other things that make you marketable. So, I thought that was an interesting comment.
But it's like getting into Cypress Point Club, for you Northern Californians. It's like, we want this guy, and we're not going to take this guy. But that other guy's a quality guy too, but he just didn't get invited for whatever reason. So yeah, this kid got in, but some other kid didn't. And if this kid had said no, it'd been some other kid.
But I think this is very important for LIV, this win, from the standpoint of, I think it makes other people, other young guys look and makes that trip more real. Like, going over there and seeing them in 20th or 25th or 30th, that really doesn't make sense. But to see a guy that they've played with, that they've, just were in college tournaments with, win $5 million and win an event and have his name, all over the internet, on this podcast, on podcasts all over, I think is important from the recruiting standpoint of when you do go to that top amateur, you can go, hey, this guy just won $5 million. Look at what's happened to his life. It's changed his life in 72
I don't
holes.
know, Ryan. I don't know, Ryan, if I agree with that, because if there's no path to the Masters golf tournament and the U.S. Open, the British Open, the PGA Championship, that's a serious for that kid from college. For Dustin Johnson, Patrick Reed, they've got a path because of what they've done for a while. They do anyway. But and of course, in Patrick Reed and Dustin Johnson's case, they'll play the Masters forever. But for the kid out of college, they're making a really, really big calculation about Max Homa's, you can't buy my dream, because he may never play in the Masters.
But Michael, I mean, the pitch that they're giving him is that they will have OWGR points, and that if he plays well enough, we're talking about a hypothetical top amateur, obviously, that they get OWGR points and he comes over and plays well, he will be at the Masters, assuming the Masters doesn't turn their back on LIV players. I go back to a conversation I had at a bar at the U.S. Open with someone who knows James Piot very well, right? And James finished 6th, his best finish, go Sparties. But, he said, Ryan, you never know what's going to happen in your golf career. Obviously, James is a little bit of an exception. He struggled his senior year after winning the U.S. Amateur, and he got 7 figures to go over there. Like, he's set for life. He hopes, I would assume, that maybe he's able to come back and play the PGA Tour. But he also can go be a club pro and work 20 hours a week and live in his nice house because he just got a bunch of millions.
It's interesting also, the one thing that hasn't been talked about enough, the path to the majors, like U.S. Open and British Open qualifying are going to be lit. I mean,
lit.
Good for Ryan.
You could have some big names rolling up for these qualifiers. I mean, if that's what it comes down to. But this is the perfect segue to Ryan's story about the MENA Tour. I would implore everyone to check out firepitcollective.com. As everyone knows, LIV Golf, I give them credit. Like, they're such they're so shady and they're such pot stirrers. Like, instead of just patiently waiting for the world ranking to and meeting all its criteria and maybe possibly tweaking their format so they could check the various boxes that have been laid out for every other tour in the world, they're always looking for a back door. They're always looking to cut a corner. And so they latched on to the MENA Tour, which has been dormant for years. And they think has $75,000 purses, and they think this might be their avenue to world. I mean, the hubris and as Bamberger would say, the chutzpah is unbelievable. Whether it works or not, I mean, I love it. It's ridiculous and it's funny and maybe it's clever, but so all of a sudden, the golf world discovered the MENA Tour, which no one really has been paying attention to. But our dogged detective here, Ryan French, has learned a bit about the MENA Tour. Ryan, tell the listeners what you know that very few people do.
Yeah, I mean, the opening paragraph that I just changed in my story is like it's a kind of a tale of old as time in mini tour golf. It happened way before the internet, that mini tours would come and go and not play players and disappear, and owners would disappear with money, or checks would bounce or whatever. And I get so many DMs about tours either being delayed in pay or not paying that I had totally forgot that at the beginning of COVID, I'd got multiple DMs at the MENA Tour had not paid players. So a DM from a follower that kind of reminded me said, didn't it the MENA Tour not pay? So I went back and did a lot of research, and I mean, the story is pretty wild. I mean, there's players that still haven't been paid. They've been given some sort of credit voucher that is worthless, basically. And it took 15 months to pay players. There was multiple emails with what most people would describe as lies or stretches of the truth with yet another excuse. And all of this is in the failed mini tour handbook that someone has put out, because this happens every time. It's like, it happened in the Big Money Classic. We're going to pay players. We're suing State Kings. This happened, that happened. This is why we can't pay you. And the MENA Tour is the same exact. So, I mean, all the guys that I talked to, took 13 to 15 months to get paid. And this was for 5 events. They put on 5 events prior to COVID, and no one got paid a dime until they finally got paid for the first 2 events. But then the 3 events disappeared. I mean, it got to the point, one player said it perfectly. He's like, there's so many excuses. I stopped opening emails and I just deleted them. I assumed I would never get paid.
I mean, we talk about this offline. I mean, it's just unbelievable how often this happens in mini tour golf. And someday Ryan French is going to write 10,000 words about who these people are who decide that starting a mini tour is a good way to make a living. I mean, it seems like an incredible amount of work to make a very small amount of money, and then things go sideways and you're left holding the bag. Sometimes it's deceit, sometimes it's incompetence, but it's a crazy part of the golf world. But the interesting question in this, and as Ryan points out in his story, he reached out to the commissioner of the MENA Tour, who's a buddy of Greg Norman's, and the guy didn't get back to us. So he didn't answer the tough questions like, did you know about, does LIV Golf know about this checkered history? Like, did LIV Golf do its due diligence? Did they know what's in your DMs? I mean, I think they latched onto this crazy idea, and they probably they may not even be aware of this until they read your story. And again, it's just, LIV's attitude is let's just move fast and break things. And it's gotten them this far. But there's some untidiness involved, and this is just yet another example.
Ryan, I'm really glad you did the reporting you did. I think it's great. But I think what we're going to find here is that all Greg Norman and the LIVsters were looking for, it's obvious to all of us, I'm sure, is some existing paperwork that they could latch onto. Mm-hmm. And so whatever problems there are, if they have to write a check for $2 million to make things straight with a bunch of pissed off people, they'll do exactly that. They'll do whatever look how they've elevated the Asian Tour in no time. Look, as Alan pointed out, just on a trickle-down effect, look how much they're already going to elevate U.S. Open and British Open qualifiers come this summer, which used to be a thing that was really fun to pay attention to, and that's sort of diminished over time. So yes, it sounds like, I'm sure Ryan has it, dead to rights. They've got a lousy history. They got a really bad acronym. I mean, if you can't come up with something better than MENA, I don't know what it would be, but MENA just does not trip off the tongue. And of course, you flip the rudder sign and get the MEN Tour. But in any event, They'll make it straight, and they'll do with that MENA Tour what they've already done with the Asian Tour, and they will. I think they'll be effective with this, Alan. I know why you're mocking, and I understand it, but I think they'll say, we are them and they are us, and if they've got points, then we get points. How you're going to actually allocate points for, no cut 54 holes short field, I don't know. That's always going to remain. The actual facts are the actual facts. Is that it's very hard to compare. Even the kid who won today, super talent, I'm sure. I know he is. With a pedigree. But we don't know what he would have done in the 72nd in holes in a fourth round. Everybody who's ever won on tour in 54 holes, it's always like, yeah, well, maybe. And I think, I'm not sure I have this correct. I think it used to be that if you won a rain-shortened event, they didn't give you the invite to the Masters. I don't know if that's changed over the years, and it very seldom happens, but it would be kind of interesting to know that. But I think it was a clever, it looks tacky, and it is tacky, and it looks like a disreputable organization or poorly run one at best. But I think it's going to work. I think they're going to get what they want out of it.
Yeah, I think from the LIV perspective, it's very much like, I put out a tweet that's like, it feels kind of like both the PGA Tour and the LIV Tour, obviously more on the LIV Tour. It's like they're kind of flying like by the seat of their pants. This MENA Tour, I am with you, Alan. I am almost positive they know nothing about what is going to come out in the story. They were just like hatched a plan, whether it was 2 weeks or 24 hours or whatever, like, hey, we'll sign on. This MENA Tour's, hasn't played in 2 years. We'll say we're the MENA Tour and we'll get world ranking points. Let's do it. And if they really thought that, or they just wanted to put more PR, pressure on the OWGR to give them points, I don't know. But it just seems like they're flying by the seat of their pants. I'm almost positive they know nothing about this. And I think to Michael's point, I hope that, and the players that spoke to me are hoping that that's what happens is they get some of the, they pay off these players and it looks good on them, right? It's like good PR that, we didn't know about this. We'll happily take care of it. It's like $40,000 or whatever. So that's, pocket change for them. And that's what I hope happens. But it just seems like all of it is kind of like, I think it could go like that, Michael, or they could go, I'm sorry, we didn't know that. Let's hook on to the Indian Pro Tour has world ranking points. Okay. So, and it's short fields all the time. All right. So 100%, they're just going to go over to the Indian Pro Tour and latch onto them.
Well, what's amazing about the MENA Tour schedule is they've got 10 events that are $75,000 purse, and they have 10 events that are $20 million purse. Like, in the history of Western civilization, has there ever been a bigger gulf between the haves and the have-nots? Like, it's just unbelievable.
My favorite part of the release is, you can read in the story, but the fact is they sent out an email to members to send more money. These are people that have been ripped off by this tour to send more money to become a member again because they need members to be OWGR. And it says in the email, we can skip Q School this year because we were shut down for COVID, blah, blah, blah. To send more money, but your category and the schedule won't be released until after you send your more money that we already. And then they released the schedule. And if you look at it from a MENA player's perspective, they promised in the email there would be 24 events. There's only 20, but 12 of them are LIV Tour events that these players will obviously never get into. I think 10 of them are actual events, the $75,000 that you speak of, Alan, and only one of them has a venue. So they don't have a schedule. They have an idea. They have like countries listed with dates, no venues, no nothing. They're just like, yeah, that looks great. Let's just send that out. And we'll look like a very reputable. All of it is to TBA. It's like it is just mini tour perfection. It is the handbook of like how do we run a shady mini tour is bunch of promises, not pay players, and big. Like we are going to have a 24 event schedule. Just we don't have golf courses yet. Besides that, we are ready to roll.
And yet the MENA Tour could hold the key to the future professional golf, because as Michael was saying earlier, I mean, it's the biggest issue right now with LIV Golf is, are they going to get more ranking points? Are these guys going to be able to play in the majors? And it'll be hysterical if the MENA Tour becomes important. I mean, it's been dormant since 2020. I mean, it's just
it
so
skipped
delicious.
2018. I mean, again, part of the checkered past is it's in the last 4 years it's played one full season and 5 events, and it is somehow a key cog in the wheel of one of the biggest golf stories in our lifetime. It is wild. Wild.
Alan, are there any new developments in jurisprudence as it relates to, the various lawsuits that are in the works and the ranking points and all the rest?
Really nothing the latter half of this week. I mean, I think most people by now know that Phil dropped off the lawsuit with some other players, and that becomes an interesting act of
Phil came back on Twitter too.
What's that?
Phil came back on Twitter too. That was a development this week.
Yeah. No, Phil is slowly emerging. Like, LIV is starting to use him a little bit more in their promotional stuff and in their social media. And he's talking a little bit more after his rounds. And, he just went underground, but he's still an important asset for LIV. I mean, he's kind of the guy in a lot of ways. He's the face of the tour, even more than Cam Smith or Dustin Johnson. And,
well, he can talk. Those two other guys can't.
Well, exactly. And I mean, if you remember what a sensation Phil was on social media for a while, like he's incredibly funny and he's got a sharp needle and he could be a great asset. And I think he's like kind of slowly starting to find his footing, and he's playing a little better. He just looked so woebegone this summer as he was kind of adapting to all these changes in his life and his professional image. But he's starting to shoot better scores. And again, it's LIV Golf. We don't know how much stock to put in a tie for 15th or whatever, but it's better to shoot 66 than 74. We all know that. So, if Phil's feeling a little friskier, that can only help LIV Golf, and it becomes more interesting heading into next season. But there's been so much, like we all know the phrase grow the game has become such a pejorative and such an eye roll. But how is this week for professional golf? PJ Tour is in Japan and LIV is in Saudi Arabia. I mean, talk about growing the game. It's sort of happening unwittingly, like pretty far-flung events. It can be some strange nocturnal habits if you want to watch any of this stuff live. But, I think it'll be interesting to see what LIV does this week. If they have any more announcements up their sleeve. They'd like to drop something the week they're in Saudi Arabia. And, I thought they might try and announce their women's schedule. That would be quite a coup. But talking to folks at LIV, they're not ready for that. I mean, one of their staffers, or one of their senior staffers, said we'd have to double the number of people, and we're still building the plane as we're trying to fly it. Like, it's just they're not ready for that. That's probably a year away. But whether they can announce another signing or whatever that may be, finalize their schedule. The next year's schedule's been leaked tentatively, but we don't have some venues and we don't have some of that stuff. So it'll be interesting. And how much are they going to try and win hearts and minds? Take Patrick Reed to an elementary school classroom again, and whatever goofiness. Like, when the European Tour goes over to one of these countries, they always do some fun, zany things. Like, what is the vibe going to be at this tournament? I think we're all waiting to see.
The LIV social media team is like going a little more out, but they aren't getting big name players to join in. I don't know if you guys saw the video of taking players to go eat crazy Thailand street food, and the 2 players they took were James Piot and someone else, and they're like, I mean, they must have been down the line before they finally got to James, and he's like, yeah, I guess so, man.
Gotta sing for your supper. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't ask James. They just got to James and were like, hey, James, guess what? You're in this bit that you got to go eat 40-year-old.
You're having for dinner, James.
You're probably gonna miss tomorrow's round with food poisoning, but your spot on this tour is precarious at best. So best get out there.
Along those same lines, I don't know what they're going to do to start selling interest or starting to get to whatever degree there is a public following for LIV at this point, I'm not saying it can't grow, because it certainly can, but that team concept, I'm looking at the internet right here. The Crushers finished at 38 under to lose by 7 to the Fireballs in the team competition.
They need new names so bad. Oh man,
there's a 0.0 chance that anybody anywhere in the world other than the three of us is talking about the results of the Fireballs, the Crushers, the Cliques, and the Ironheads. Let's see who finished. Oh, the Majestics finished 7th.
Yeah,
how many teams are there?
The Nibliks finished 4th.
That's true, but I of course I'm in too deep on all this stuff. But like the team that won this week, I mean, they're basically the hot-blooded Latin players, right? Like that's how they're going to have to sell them, and they are going to rebrand, rename. All that's up for grabs next year. This was a beta year. They were adding players as they went, and the whole team thing will be much more baked out next year. And because I think they're cleverly grouping them by country or by region, I do think that creates more interest. Like if I'm a fan in Latin America, and I see all the players on one team kind of look like me, and they're speaking Spanish to each other, and they're waving their national flags, like I do think that has a chance. And if they get the richest guy in Peru to buy the team and promote it, and it's on some regional cable network throughout Latin America, like there is a possibility that this could work. Just like you'll have an Australian team, you'll have a South African team, you'll have an all English team, you'll have whatever. Like I think that if they rebrand and they get away from these hokey names, and it's a little more organic to the identity of the players and the teams, they could have some fun with it. So
Alan,
your point is well taken, Michael. Right now, it's a non-starter.
Alan, with respect, college football in the United States is one of the most popular sporting entertainments in the world. As Ryan will tell us, and he knows better than you or I, Alan, nobody watches college golf. So if they can't make college golf work, how are they going to make the Fireballs and the Aces and the Majestics watchable?
The Nibliks?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
not watchable, right, but that you care about it.
I mean, if you had a South African team and you called them the Springboks, which is like one of their big, is it rugby or is it? I think it's rugby. Whatever. These sports. You get a team of all Indian players, and you somehow grafted onto the cricket fan base by aligning it with a big team. Like, I'm just thinking out loud here. Like maybe
100% underneath this podcast, someone is saying that Alan is paid by LIV, right? I mean, like that 100%.
I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm just saying that's the vision.
100%. I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah. Well,
I mean,
no, I get it both ways. I'm a stooge for LIV.
Yeah. That's what
the tour.
Like, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to get like, well, the PGA Tour must have put you up to this.
I mean, if someone did the math on all the bitchiness we get on Twitter, we'd be zillionaires, Ryan, because everyone's paying us to do every story. Like, yeah. I'm only getting one check from the fire pit. That sucks, man. I should be getting paid by LIV, the PGA Tour, by Tim Fincham, Jay Monahan, Greg Norman. Like, where's the money? Show me the money.
Back to the team thing. I'm with you, Alan. I honestly think it could be a thing. The fact that everyone switched teams and they have stupid names and all that kind of stuff has really kind of ruined it. And Michael, and here's the deal: is the championship, the year-end championship, is $50 million, and it's all team related. So it's like they're going to force it down our throats, kind of in a way of like, hey, this is important. This is what it does. I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm just saying it's coming. And the biggest thing that I've agreed with that that LIV has changed is shotgun starts are good. I like them. I'm all in on shotgun starts. Obviously, it can't work because the fields are too big in the PGA Tour. I love a 2 or 3, 4 hour, everybody's on the course at the same time. It's really good.
Ryan, do you think these massive paydays for team events, that you think that becomes more appealing to the public at large? Because I think the opposite for sure. And I think the FedEx quote playoffs end quote is almost proof of that.
Yeah,
People are turned off by it.
I mean, I agree. I'm not even talking about. I agree, Michael, totally on the money. I mean, that obviously, as you know, like funny money and no cut events, just zero interest to me to start. But I'm just saying they're forcing the team to it, so they're going to really push for that to, be a huge part of who they are. I mean, it just is. So it's either going to work or it's not. It's not like they're having it in the background is all I'm saying is they're making it a prominent part of who they are.
Well, and it's an important part of their business model because everyone's like, these guys are not trying to make money. They're just pissing it away. I mean, they do want to make money. They at least want to break even. Like you don't have the biggest fun in the world by making bad business decisions. And the vision is they can sell these franchises for tens and tens of millions, maybe 100 million. Some of the numbers sound fantastical, but when you think about it, there's a very limited number of English Premier League football teams that are available, or NFL teams, or NBA teams, and there's a lot of really rich dudes who want to own something in the sports space. Probably most of them play golf, and so they may have more interest in buying these franchises than we could imagine because we're not bored rich guys. And so if
And,
they
and
can get,
especially as you talk, Alan, in other countries, I mean, the
yeah,
guy in Spain who knows Sergio and, wants to hang out with Sergio and is a billionaire is like, yeah, sure. I'll buy this team for 150 million or whatever that's going to
yeah,
be.
I mean, you buy Dustin's team, you get to hang out on the yacht with him and Paulina. It looks fun, right? Like, so anyway, we don't have to go totally down the live rabbit hole, but it's I just think that this week when they're in Saudi Arabia is going to be fascinating on any number of levels. And but anything else we need to talk about before we end this fire drill podcast?
I think Jim Furyk won the senior event.
No, he didn't. It was his event, dude. Wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
He didn't win it. It was
Who
his
won the
event.
thing?
I don't know, but I don't think Jim did because it's his event. Hold, please. Steve Stricker won the Constellation Furyk and Friends.
I would like to see Steve Stricker and Tom Kim compare swing notes because this Tom Kim, he's just got a short backswing without much oomph. It doesn't look like he's trying to kill it at all. Has anybody? Thank you for that update, Ryan. I appreciate that. Has anybody heard Tom Kim talk about what he's trying to achieve with that golf swing or why he swings the way he swings? It's beautiful. It's different. I mean,
Yeah,
it's so not John Rahm. It's so just.
It's a little. Oh, John Rahm, by the way, shot 62 to win in Spain, which I think is so cool because
And then congratulated the guy from LIV for winning. Very controversial.
Yeah. Well, and John Rahm's been out there saying he wants to live guys on the Ryder Cup team. There's all these little subtle.
Sure, why wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Rory said the opposite. Rory's flat out said, "I don't want these guys. I'm paraphrasing. They're a cancer. We don't want them in our team room." I think Rahm's more pragmatic. Like, we're seriously outgunned. We need some depth, and let's bring some of those boys over. But the thing about John Rahm, he's probably the best golfer on planet Earth, but he just doesn't win enough. Like, he shoots 62 to win on his home soil. Like, maybe that will be some rocket fuel for him. It's kind of a B-list European Tour event, but he goes there and supports it, which is cool. And anytime you shoot 62 on Sunday to win a tournament that has meaning to you, that's massive momentum. So I love John Rahm. I think he's a great statesman, and he's really fun to watch play. And I do think he's the most proficient golfer we have, but I just would like to see more victories. So it would be awesome if this ignites something.
Okay, I know people are going to start clicking off. I can feel the clicks right now. But Frank Lickliter, okay, otherwise known as the Blade, and I'll get to that in a moment. But Frank Lickliter in the Constellation Furyk and Friends finished dead fucking last by 10 strokes, which is hard to do in a professional golf tournament. He fired 82, 82, 75 to shoot plus 23. And for the people listening that haven't been to a Champions event, this is not the most difficult setups in the world, okay? You're not meant to shoot plus 23. So his nickname, the Blade, is because he allegedly pulled a knife on somebody and was arrested. That part is not allegedly, but allegedly was. My Frank Lickliter story at the John Deere Monday qualifier. He comes in. Frank Lickliter, for those that don't know, smokes very, very grumpy, very cross, smokes like a chimney. Plays in every Monday qualifier for reasons no one knows because he hasn't been sniffed one in 15 years. He's at the John Deere. He's 49, and he's eligible to play in the Corn Ferry event in Utah. And I'm standing outside, and his caddy puts down the bag, and Frank goes into scoring, and his caddy's like, I'm not fucking going to Utah. I don't care what Frank says. He's an old grumpy asshole. I'm not going. Whatever happens, I'm not going to Utah. And Frank comes out and goes, let's go to Utah. And the caddy goes, okay, and puts his bag in and they head to Chicago.
Well, so there was a period where Frank Lickliter was shooting good scores on the PGA Tour. And that was like the beginning of that was like mid-90s. I was new to the beat. And he was the most frightening guy to interview because he just DGAF. I mean, he did not pretend to care and had no social graces. But I did catch him one time during a rain delay at Pebble Beach, and he smoked about 10 cigarettes. He told me all kinds of great stuff, and it made my whole story. So I've always had some affection for
I love him. I love him. There's none of that. That is all in. Allegedly, he carries a gun in his, bag. It goes back to everyone always says, Alan, that I am happy with, people who smoke. It's not. It's that smokers are the golf's best characters. End of story. I don't have to agree with anything that Frank does, but he's just a great character.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about someone smoking is they're just going to kind of stand there. You can hit them with about 20 questions per cigarette. I mean, they're not going anywhere. They can't go in the clubhouse.
They literally can't go inside. They literally cannot go inside. Michael, have you talked to Frank Lickliter in your prolific career?
Yeah, I have. There was a thing I remember, but I'm not remembering the details. Alan will probably remember it.
Brad Paxton.
Yeah. What happened there, Alan?
It was like maybe the Shark Shootout was a team event, I think, and Lickliter was taking a drop, and Faxon kind of wandered over to check it out.
And Lickliter's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?"
Yeah, exactly. He dropped an F-bomb, and it got really spicy, and I think the cameras caught it, and it became a whole thing. And of course, Brad Faxon, we know, is the nicest guy in the world, and so the public opinion was on Brad's side. Put it that way.
I don't know. We should ask Cat Fawcett about his opinion of Brad Faxon. When we sent out the text message of what we were going to talk about, the blade was not anywhere on this. And
that was a very subtle. Well, I thought it was, I served you up an easy one with the reference to the senior event that let you go 82, 82, 78 for 23 over, I think.
Yeah, 75.
By the way, Ryan, if I may use this phrase twice with respect, one doesn't say one fires in 82.
Yeah, it's true.
Now, if Alan and I are playing together and he's going to report my score of 82 back to, let's say, Matt Janella, he can say, Bamberger was amazing. He fired an 82. That would be appropriate because that's as good as I can shoot.
What did he slogged his way to an 82?
He chopped
his way.
He returned 82.
He signed for 82.
I mean, honestly, that would have been the most compelling golf of the whole season if he was mic'd up and they showed every shot.
Oh my God. I mean, if you would have a mic on Frank Lickliter and caddy when he's firing, when he's slogging through an 82, 82, 75, break the internet type stuff.
But before I knew LIV Golf was ever going to exist, I believe I watched Phil win this Furyk event, Furyk and Friends at Timuquanan in I don't know if that's where they still play it. And I felt just watching it off TV, Phil was winning the thing, or I think went on to win the thing. And I felt like I could feel palpably Phil's boredom winning the senior event. So I think the handwriting was already on the wall, and people want to blame Shipnuck for the whole LIV thing. But
I think it might have been Jim Furyk. It might have been Jim Furyk.
Well, Furyk might have something to do with it, but I think when Phil won that tournament and realized that it meant nothing to him, it's like, I got to find something else to do with my next 20 years. Now, why he didn't go into business with Larry David and start doing their thing, because Larry David likes golf and Phil likes to try to be funny. That had promise, but anyway, he went another way.
So, side note about this would be the same question for the Corn Ferry event. You go up to 100 players, 100 fans, casual, that watches golf, knows something about golf. How many would be able to answer that Steve Stricker won the Champions Tour this week? Because the three people on this podcast know way too much about golf. And I know way, way too much about meaningless golf. And I didn't know that Steve Stricker won. So
like if you went to like a local muni and you asked 100 golfers,
yes, or right, like tomorrow morning on the range, you went to a municipal course range and you said, "Hey, who won the Champions event?" Would one person be able to answer?
Something I did know, and I've forgotten that Steve Stricker won it. And I'll tell you why I know, because I looked at the scores, and I think Bernhard Langer finished about 4 shots back, and he's about 80.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's won like every event. That's a bad sign for the bad sign for the Champions Tour.
No, it's not. It's a huge statement about Bernhard Langer, Ryan.
Yeah,
he is an absolute.
He looks the same.
Way, he's not 80. He's about 63, and he's an absolute, complete, total stud. He's the closest thing we have to a Hogan in our era. Go ahead, Ryan.
This thing has gone off the rails, and I 100% my fault with Frank Lickliter and the John Deere story, and from there it has been a fucking shit show. But great. I think it's great. I love this part of it. I love it. I love the mess of all of this, and I love that Jake is sitting silently. For those listening, there's 3 windows across, and we can see each other. But Jake goes incognito, and I know. He's got his do-rag on tonight, and like he is going like, what the fuck has happened to my podcast? And he hates when I do this shit. And I loved the Frank Lickliter stuff, and I love that I know that you cornered him for a thing, and I just love everything about it.
I think the answer is the lunatic fringe of golf fan. That's who listens to our podcast. So yes. Probably the people out there might be enjoying this because this is what they signed up for. This is what they signed up for. We're not making them listen. I think they're doing it by choice, and they're hopefully slightly entertained, or at least they're finishing their workout, whatever it is. So, but you could be right, Ryan. We might have lost 80% of our audience at this point.
It's fine. I mean, one of the biggest questions I always get when I tweet about Frank Lickliter is why is he called the Blade, and that answer is in this podcast. So.
And to answer your hypothetical, I would say if you asked 100 players at the Salinas Fairways range tomorrow, who won the Champions event, I'm going to say 6, because there are some people who are just bored at home and they just flip on, or they're in the grill room after their round and they just happen to catch the end. I mean, that's not horrible.
Michael, how many out of 100?
3 top.
I would say 1. Yeah, maybe. The guy from Wisconsin who's,
Alan, John Rahm, 62, it's great. Tom Kim, it's great. And when people see Tom Kim's name, they shouldn't think it's like a typo for Tom Kite. It's actually Tom Kim. But I would say Bernhard Langer, is he 63? Shooting 10 under when the winner shot 14 under is actually astounding. And I have a little bit of a theory on that. I think this guy's played so much tournament golf. Like who, Alan? Oh, who are we talking? Well, it must have been Jeff Ogilvy. We were saying, guys play fast at home. They shoot 68, and then they go to a tournament. They shoot, they shoot 73. But Bernhard Langer has played so much tournament golf at this point that I would think it's just like a continuation of his everyday golf life. I mean, that's probably the only golf he plays is tournament golf. So there's no nervous disorder or anything else. He just knows how to play golf and.
Yeah,
give him the club, give him the ball.
Who cares what Justin Thomas's whoop reading is? I'd like to see it on Bernie Longer, because I bet
he goes to the cryo chamber.
I bet on Sunday afternoon his heartbeat is the exact same as a Tuesday practice round. Like you're saying, Michael, I think he's completely immune to the nerves and the mojo and all of it, and he's just playing golf.
Just skill.
Yeah,
super skilled at golf. Doesn't care what the swing looks like.
Wouldn't that be delightful? I mean, it's like I know that's my own game. When I get off to a crappy start in a round, and I'm like, oh my God, this sucks. I'm gonna have to struggle to break 90, and then all of a sudden you start playing great because you've given up. And to quote Chivas Irons, you've let the nothingness into your shots, and you get out of your own way and you just swing. And I mean, I think that's probably the blessed state that a very small number of humans on the planet can summon in tournament golf, and we know who
Well,
they are.
yeah, I think Ryan knows something about this because, and we're going to get into another time, but he won the club championship at Alpena, his home club once when he was, I believe, 18 years old in the late summer of let's see, 1995, because he's born in '77. And we won't get into it now, Ryan, so don't get into it now. We'll save it for another time. But his general attitude through the round was, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And it went to a third playoff hole, and Ryan wanted to hit 6 on this par 3, and the dad's like, no, it's a 5. And Ryan's like, I don't give a fuck. So he took the 5, and he stiffed it and won the event. But so I think
to that point,
Ryan, Ryan.
No, This is about the DGAF. Mark Baldwin. Pro golf is exactly. If you could bottle DGAF, right? Like Mark Baldwin or any other pro can go out on a casual round of golf and shoot 65 relatively easy. But when the chips are down, Mark always says, if I could just bottle not giving a fuck, I would already be on the PGA Tour.
Wow. That's neat.
Okay, Jake, I know you're struggling right now, and this has gone real. Michael and Alan, how many Champions Tour wins does Bernhard Langer currently own?
Oh my God.
Do you know the hardest trivia question in golf, and the only guy who can answer it is the guy who used to run Titleist, Peter Uihlein, Wally Uihlein, Peter Uihlein's father. The hardest trivia question in golf is, can you name all the LPGA commissioners?
Ooh.
But this is the second hardest question in golf.
Yes. Charlie Meacham, Jim Ritz.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with 42, but that was a total guess.
In 13 years, he had many 6 and 5 win seasons. I'm going to say it's 58.
Wow, Michael Bamberger, winner of the day. 43, Michael. You missed it by 1.
Honest to God, I pulled out of nowhere. I have no idea why I got that right.
He passed his European Tour total. He had 42 European Tour wins and now has 43 Champions Tour wins.
Yeah.
And somehow that's second all time, which is wild. Who would be first?
I'm going to guess Hale Irwin.
Okay.
Is that right?
45. 45. He's got to play enough to pass Hale.
Yeah. Trevino's got to be up there.
Hale broke Peter Thomson's record. I think when Hale won like 11, and I think Thomson had 10. And I was in Hawaii when Irwin broke the record, writing for a Golf Plus story. And I reached Peter Thomson somehow in Australia. And we had he's just such a gent and just this incredible golfing mind, and had the delightful conversation. And this would have been the mid to late 90s. It was basically before the internet. I don't think I had a cell phone. I didn't have an email. The internet existed, but it was still rare. And Peter Thomson, and I got him. It would have been like basically, I think it was Sunday morning in Hawaii. So it would have been like Monday afternoon, or I don't know, something like that in Australia. And he said to me, well, let me know if Hale does it, because I won't get the results for 3 or 4 days. And so Irwin wins, he breaks the record, and I called Peter Thomson a couple times, and the phone rang and rang, and he never answered. That was like the kicker to my story. It was very poignant. Like he didn't even know. And
as a member of Parliament, he might have been doing some other more important work. Did he not have an elected position in Parliament at some point? I may be way off on that.
I'm not sure, but it's interesting. As I'm writing about, I'm writing this LIV book, and Norman is obviously a central character. I've been talking to a lot of Aussies, and of course, it's come through in some of our conversations with Jeff Ogilvy. The esteem that people have for Peter Thomson, it's made me appreciate him in a different way, because, and I've gone back and read some of his writings, like he rivals Bobby Jones for the elegance of his prose as far as professional golfers go. And he was just a great thinker and such a gent. And I think about that conversation a lot. It was the only time I ever talked to him. But and when sometimes, you see on the internet these old golfers and their swings, and some of them don't hold up. It's like an old black and white movie, like that you can just tell their club head speed's about 84, and it just doesn't look like a real golf swing anymore. But Peter Thomson's action is so elegant and so timeless. Like, I would encourage any golf fan to search it up, because it's just a beautiful move. And it's a shame he didn't play more in the U.S. and didn't have his heyday was kind of.
I was never aware that he won so much on the senior tour until you just said that.
He came over and he did it. I mean, he did the damn thing. Like, he was just so gifted.
Man,
Anyway.
I could listen to you guys talk about little shit like that phone call to Peter Thomson. I mean, that is so cool. I could.
Well, when Peter
you guys
was
should write a book. Oh, you've written a bunch, but I'm just
when
saying.
Peter was really old, let's see. Well, he died about 3 years ago, 2015. I think there was an Open at St.
18.
Andrews.
Yeah,
He died in 2018. So, but in 2015, he was not in great shape, and he came to St. Andrews and he played in that little outing where the old champs go out and they play 1 and 2 and 17 and 18. And just to see Peter Thomson on the old course and what he won 5 Opens, that was something to see. And even then, he had a beautifully fluid swing. In his mid 80s there. He was a total gen. I think Bob Charles, whom I don't know at all, but I think he is held in similar. Well, I know he's held in similar esteem. He didn't have nearly the record that Peter Thomson had, but he was a great golfer in his own right.
I remember when we started this podcast, or we'll just. I mean, every time we do it, we say it'll just be a half an hour. We'll just knock it out real quick. And Frank Lickliter blew it up.
I mean, as with many conversations that go from Frank Lickliter to Peter Thomson, it's a natural progression. The taverns in St. Andrews,
Now Jake in his do-rag is got to edit this whole thing out. So let's.
All right, if I may, I'm going to read a quote, and you tell me the sport. Tell me the sport and the writer, if you care to.
Ooh, okay.
It breaks your heart. My brother just sent me this. It breaks your heart. It's designed to break your heart. The game begins in the spring when everything else begins again, and it blossoms in the summer, filling the afternoons and evenings. And then as soon as the chill rains come, it stops and leaves you to face the fall alone.
Roger Angel, baseball.
Ryan?
I mean, it's got to be baseball. I don't know any good base. Ken Burns.
Well, that's good. If I told you that it was Herb in golf, Alan, would you be shocked?
I would not.
It's Bart Giamatti in baseball.
Bart, yeah.
Do you know what Roger said of Bart? He is a career 400 talker, but he was also a career 400 writer. But the beauty of that quote, I think, is it kind of would hold up for golf, except for that they play golf, professional golf 50 weeks a year. Yeah. I like the fact that we, the three of us, have an off season. I think it's good. But anyway,
do we though? Do you know that Michael wrote a play about the
yes. I just spent 12 hours in a fucking car with Michael Bamberger. We've covered it all.
It's a long thing. I mean, it's a different discipline than journalism. It shows the guy's he's a 5-tool player, to use a baseball term.
I mean, he took a shot. Like, you have to, both Mark is very subtle too when he caddies. He's like, yeah, he'll say things like, maybe we could grab a bar next time we go buy one. Like, oh, you should have grabbed one the last time, you fucking idiot. But Michael said the other day, I said, man, I really just try to shut up and listen. And he goes, Ryan, you do about 90% of the talking. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, noted. Shut the fuck up around Michael Bamberger sometimes.
Well, I guess that's probably a good ending point. We should all shut up and end this podcast because it's a little discursive, but that's the fun of the medium. Like, I mean, maybe the listeners should play it back at 1.5 speed so you get just to be a little faster. But,
hey, Jake, and your do-rag, do not edit 1 second of this out. It was all gold.
Our producer, Jake Muldowney, will not touch this. He knows better than that.
We love you.
All right. Well, this was
guys.
a long and winding fire drill podcast.
Honest to God, this was not messing around. This was my favorite fire drill we've ever done.
All right. Well, I have an Australia-based story that's going to melt your face off for next time.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
It's like a 10-minute story. We can't start it now, but remind me of this next time we do this. And I will say to the listeners, we're beta testing an idea. We're just going to have a Sunday night podcast, rain or shine, with a variety.
We're not actually sending this out to people, are we?
Yeah, 100%.
Yes, we are, Michael.
Crazy. I thought this was like a warm-up act for something. Like
no, this was amazing.
No, this is going out. I mean, so we're going to call that around the fire. It's kind of a play on around the horn, and we're gonna have maybe a half dozen staffers talking about what they're doing and what's going on in the world of golf. But we haven't done a fire drill in a while, and we gotta feed the beast, Michael. So yeah, this is going.
Jake, that's the social clip. That is the social clip. Michael Bamberger saying, "We're not going to send this actually out to people, are we?"
We are. We are.
I would have shaved.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, because I think the more we do these things, the more fun it is for all of us. So,
oh my God, I loved every second of that last 40 minutes. I really did. Serious, not no jokes. I could listen to you guys tell little anecdotal stories about people like Peter Thomson and Bart Giamatti and whatever. Wonderful. God, that was awesome.
All right, I'm ending this effing
Look
podcast.
at Michael's look. Look at Michael's look. He's like, no way. We're really releasing this. Could be the end of my career.
Well, it's 11:30 at night in Philly. The poor guy. I mean,
I know. I gotta load my story.
By the way, just a very quick aside. When people speak of teams like the Niblets, and what are some of those other teams? The Flying Aces, the High Flyers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fireballs.
I was in Philadelphia. Our baseball team is called the Phillies.
Yeah.
Our football team is called the Eagles. And nobody's got to do any social media, anything to promote interest in those teams. In other words,
I don't know about that.
Because they're our team. Well, anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
all right.
I love it.
I love it. Both of you, be silent.
All
so I can end this podcast. We have to release our listeners.
Are you going to make a pitch for our commercial sponsors again, or are you done with that?
I did that at the start, like an hour and a half ago. It's been so long you forgot.
No, I did hear it, but I had a question about the scoring system.
This is Alan Shipnuck. That was Ryan French and Michael Bamberger. This was a Fire Drill podcast. Our apologies to the listeners. We'll tighten things up next time. We promise. It's going to be a solid 32 minutes next time. But this was good fun as always. Thank you for coming along on our chats, and we will be back in your ears soon. This is the end, but only for a week or so.